Welcome. In the next 20 minutes, we are going to make PPWR labeling practical. When people say the PPWR label, they often imagine one new EU sticker that can be placed on every package. That is not how the regulation works. The PPWR creates several separate information duties: traceability, manufacturer and importer contact details, future harmonized material composition labels, and special digital information for situations such as reusable packaging or EPR identification. Today I will separate those duties, show you the dates, and use a cardboard box example so that you can see what a workable label looks like. I will also show where software such as Lappa fits into the process. Collecting packaging data, identifying the responsible economic operator, generating a controlled label, and keeping the evidence behind it. One important warning before we start: the final harmonized EU pictograms and formats depend on Commission implementing acts. So this webinar explains the legal architecture and the practical workflow. Artwork should always be checked against the acts and guidance in force on the release date. I'm James Harwood. I've spent the last 10 years working on EPR and packaging regulation across the UK and EU, helping brands navigate labeling, traceability, and compliance requirements. The simplest way to understand PPWR labeling is to split it into 4 layers. First, traceability. The packaging must be identifiable by a type, batch, or serial number, or another element that lets the package be traced. Second, economic operator details. The manufacturer must provide its name and contact point. If packaging is imported into the Union, the importer has its own information obligation. Third, the consumer-facing material and sorting label. This is the part most people picture when they hear PPWR label, but its harmonized EU design applies later, not simply on the general application date of the regulation. Fourth, digital information. A QR code can carry certain information, but the legal status changes by use case. It may be used for component sorting information. It can carry manufacturer contact details. It becomes important for reusable packaging, and EPR scheme identification is digital only under the PPWR framework. Keeping these 4 layers separate prevents 2 common mistakes: printing too much information as if everything were mandatory, and waiting for the future pictograms while missing the traceability and operator obligations that arrive earlier. Here's the timeline I recommend using in every PPWR label project. The regulation entered into force on the 11th of February 2025. It generally applies from the 12th of August 2026. That is when the conformity framework, technical documentation, declaration of conformity, and economic operator duties become operational for most packaging. By 12th February 2027, packaging covered by an EPR scheme may be identified only through a symbol inside a QR code or another standardized open digital marking technology. In other words, PPWR moves EPR identification away from a physical scheme badge. The harmonized material composition label comes later, from 12th August 2028 or 24 months after the relevant implementing acts enter into force, whichever is later. Reusable packaging has a separate date, 12th February 2029 or 30 months after the implementing act, whichever is later. That whichever is later wording matters. It means the calendar date alone is not enough. Your software should store both the statutory date and the implementing act date, then calculate the real application date. For artwork teams, the practical rule is simple: prepare your data and layouts now, but do not invent the final EU pictogram. What changes first is not the final consumer sorting icon. It is the ability to identify the packaging and the responsible businesses. The packaging needs a type, batch, or serial number, or another element that allows identification. That does not mean every package needs a unique serial number. A controlled packaging SKU, artwork revision, and production lot can work together, provided the system actually leads back to the technical documentation. The manufacturer must indicate its name or trade name, a postal address with a single contact point, and an electronic contact method where available. The regulation allows this information to be on the packaging or in a QR code or other data carrier. If the physical package cannot carry the information, it may be in an accompanying document. An importer has a separate duty to provide its own details when applicable. This is frequently missed in draft labels created for non-EU brands. Behind those visible fields, the manufacturer needs technical documentation and an EU declaration of conformity. The label is not the proof by itself. It is the front door into the evidence. And one quick myth, PPWR does not create a CE marking requirement for packaging. Now, we come to the future consumer-facing label. Article 12 says packaging will carry a harmonized label showing material composition so consumers can sort it correctly. The label must use pictograms and be understandable, including for people with disabilities. Waste receptacles will use corresponding labels, so the package and the bin speak the same visual language. The crucial point is timing. The application date is 12 August 2028, or 24 months after the relevant implementing acts enter into force, whichever is later. The Commission is responsible for defining the harmonized label, formats, digital specifications, and methodology for material identification. So, what should businesses do now? Build the data. For each packaging component, record the material family, material subtype, whether components are integrated or separable, whether the packaging is compostable or reusable, and which markets and languages are involved. What should businesses not do? Invent a final EU icon, size, or color system before the official specification is confirmed. Once the rule applies, the label must be visible, legible, firmly attached, or printed, and the same information must be available before an online purchase. Let's use the attached draft to make the distinction concrete. Number 1 is the traceability block. The concept is correct. Package name and a lot or batch reference. Size and gross weight can be useful operationally, but PPWR does not require those specific fields as part of the traceability information. Number 2 is the manufacturer block. Again, the concept is correct. We need the legal or trade name, postal address, and an electronic contact method where available. Number 3 is the authorized representative. This role can be very important, particularly for holding documents and cooperating with authorities. But PPWR does not create a general rule saying that the authorized representative's name and address must appear on the package. So this should be presented as an optional service field, not as a mandatory label section. Number 4 is the material and sorting information. PAP20 is a legacy material identification code. It is not the same as the future harmonized PPWR pictogram, and it does not by itself prove recyclability. Number 5 is the QR code. It is a good design choice, but the destination page must be stable, specific to the package and organized around compliance information rather than marketing. The draft has a strong visual hierarchy, so I would not rebuild it from zero. I would correct the legal framing, keep the packaging name and identifier, the manufacturer block, a controlled QR code, and the material data. Those are useful and can feed both the label and the technical file. Change the title. PPWR, traceability label, sounds like an official regulated label format. A safer title is PPWR packaging information or packaging traceability and material information. Mark the authorized representative field as optional. A company may choose to show it, but the user should not think PPWR always requires it on pack. Treat PAP20 and free text sorting instructions as current or transitional information, not the final EU label. Once the fully harmonized system applies, the official label is intended to replace additional national sorting labels, apart from specific deposit return situations. Add importer details where the legal supply chain includes an importer. Also add an artwork version and effective date so the label can be controlled. Finally, make sure the same regulated information is available before purchase online when the Article 12 label requirements apply. The principle is simple. Every field should have a status, so it's mandatory, conditional, optional, or future.